take a deep breath. And let's hear a story about Hellen, a kind veterinarian whose life changed when she befriended a capybara. In the gentle embrace of rolling hills and sprawling meadows, Hellen Peterson practiced her calling as the only veterinarian in Meadowbrook, a quaint rural town where everyone knew each other by name. Her small clinic, housed in a renovated barn with whitewashed walls and a tin roof that sang melodically when rain fell, stood at the edge of town beside a babbling brook. The soft, earthy scent of hay and the sweet fragrance of wildflowers always lingered in the air, creating a sanctuary not just for animals but for their worried owners as well. Hellen had always possessed a special connection with animals, her gentle hands and soothing voice capable of calming even the most distressed creatures. Her auburn hair was often tied in a loose braid that cascaded down her back, and her emerald eyes held a warmth that instantly put both animals and humans at ease. The locals often said that Hellen didn't just heal bodies, she healed souls, leaving a trail of gratitude and soft smiles in her wake as she moved through her days with purpose and compassion. The clinic itself was a reflection of Hellen's personality, organized yet cozy, with wooden beams overhead and large windows that welcomed the golden sunlight, casting dappled patterns across the polished floors. A collection of wind chimes hung outside, creating a gentle symphony that drifted through the open windows on warm summer days. Inside, comfortable chairs invited tired bodies to rest, and the walls displayed children's drawings of beloved pets, creating a tapestry of community, love, and appreciation. Each morning, Hellen would wake with the sunrise, taking a moment to savor the peaceful transition from night to day as she sipped her chamomile tea on the porch of her small cottage. The distant chorus of birdsong would accompany her morning ritual, filling her with gratitude for another day of doing what she loved most. The cool morning air, crisp and fresh, would fill her lungs as she took deep, mindful breaths, centering herself for the day ahead. Her days were filled with the soft patting of paws, the gentle purring of cats, and the occasional bark or moo that echoed through the clinic's walls. Every animal had a story, and Hellen listened to them all, not just with her stethoscope, but with her heart. She treated the town's farm animals with the same care and attention as she did the beloved family pets, understanding that each creature played an important role in the tapestry of rural life. On her desk sat a collection of thank you notes and small trinkets from grateful pet owners, a handmade ceramic cat, a painting of a sunset, jars of homemade preserves, each one a testament to the lives she had touched. The soft ticking of the antique clock on the wall marked the passing hours, reminding her to treasure each moment and each interaction, no matter how brief or routine it might seem. The townsfolk of Meadowbrook often spoke of Hellen's almost magical ability to know exactly what an animal needed, whether it was medical treatment, a gentle touch, or simply someone to sit quietly beside them. Children would press their noses against the clinic windows, watching in wonder as she worked, dreaming of following in her footsteps someday. Even the most hardened farmers would soften in her presence, their weathered hands becoming gentle when she demonstrated how to check their livestock for signs of illness. As evening approached each day, Hellen would meticulously clean her instruments and tidy the examination rooms, humming softly to herself as the day's events settled in her mind. The gradually fading sunlight would paint the clinic in warm hues of amber and gold, casting long shadows that danced across the floors. These quiet moments of transition were precious to her, a time to reflect on the day's victories, no matter how small they might seem to others. The walk home each evening was Helen's time to decompress, to let the whispers of the wind through the tall grass carry away any lingering worries. The path from the clinic to her cottage was lined with wildflowers that seemed to nod in greeting as she passed, their sweet fragrance mingling with the earthy scent of the countryside. Stars would begin to appear overhead one by one, like old friends returning for their nightly vigil. Her cottage, with its stone walls and thatched roof, stood nestled among ancient oak trees whose leaves rustled soothingly in the evening breeze. The soft glow of lamplight spilling from the windows created a beacon of warmth and comfort that welcomed her home each night. Inside, her collection of well-loved books and hand-knitted blankets created a snug haven where she could unwind and restore her energy for the days ahead. Helen's dinner ritual was simple, yet deeply satisfying. Fresh vegetables from her garden, herbs that filled the kitchen with their aromatic presence, and homemade bread whose yeasty scent evoked feelings of home and comfort. She savored each bite mindfully, appreciating the nourishment and the connection to the land that provided it. The gentle clink of silverware against ceramic plates created a soothing rhythm that helped her transitioning to evening's peaceful stillness. Before sleep claimed her each night, Hellen would write in her journal by candlelight, recording moments of joy and healing from her day. The soft scratching of pen against paper was meditative, allowing her thoughts to flow freely until her eyelids grew heavy with sleep. The flicker of the candle flame cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating a cocoon of tranquility that enveloped her as she drifted towards dreams filled with nature's gentle creatures. In this rhythm of days and seasons, Hellen had found contentment, a life intertwined with the natural world and the community she served with such devotion. Little did she know that an unexpected visitor was about to add a new chapter to her story, one that would bring even more joy and purpose to her already fulfilling life. The universe had a gentle surprise waiting just around the corner, ready to unfold in its own perfect time. It happened on a particularly beautiful Tuesday in early autumn, when the maple trees had just begun to blush with hints of gold and crimson. Hellen had spent the day treating a neighbor's horse with colic, her hands working methodically to bring relief, while her voice maintained a constant, calming murmur. The grateful wicker from the recovered animal had filled her with that familiar sense of purpose as she packed her supplies and prepared to head home as the sun began its descent, painting the countryside in warm, honeyed light. As Hellen stepped outside the clinic, locking the door behind her with a satisfying click, she noticed an unusual figure sitting perfectly still by the brook that ran alongside her property. The creature's chestnut fur gleamed in the late afternoon sunlight, its rounded silhouette unmistakable against the backdrop of waving grasses. A capybara, the world's largest rodent, sat calmly regarding her with intelligent, gentle eyes that seemed to hold a question. For a moment, Hellen stood transfixed, her breath caught in her throat at the unexpected sight. Capybaras weren't native to this region. The closest zoo was over 100 miles away. Yet here one sat as composed as if it had always belonged beside her clinic, its whiskers twitching slightly in the gentle breeze. Hellen's veterinary mind immediately began assessing the animal, looking for signs of distress or injury. But the capybara appeared perfectly healthy, well-fed, with bright eyes and a glossy coat. "Well, hello there," Hellen said softly, her voice carrying on the evening air like a melody. The capybara's ears perked up at the sound, and it tilted its head slightly, regarding her with what almost seemed like recognition. Its calm demeanor was remarkable. No fear, no agitation, simply a peaceful acknowledgement of her presence, as if they were old friends meeting by chance. "You're a long way from home, aren't you, friend?" she continued, taking a cautious step forward. The capybara made no move to flee, instead, blinking slowly as the last golden rays of sunlight dappled across its fur, creating patterns like gentle brushstrokes on a living canvas. Hellen considered her options. She could try to capture the animal and contact wildlife authorities, but the capybara showed no signs of distress and appeared well nourished. After a moment's contemplation, she simply smiled and nodded at her unusual visitor. "Enjoy the brook." "It's a lovely evening for sitting by the water," she said, continuing on her path homeward. All through her evening routine, the preparation of a simple meal, the soft strains of classical music filling her cottage, the gentle weight of a book in her hands, Hellen found her thoughts returning to the capybara. The creature's calm presence had stirred something in her, a feeling of connection that lingered like the aftertaste of honey tea. As she drifted to sleep that night, the image of the capybara sitting serenely by the brook accompanied her into dreams filled with peaceful waters and gentle creatures. The next evening, after a busy day treating farm animals and household pets, Helen almost forgot about her unusual encounter until she stepped outside and saw the capybara in exactly the same spot, its round body silhouetted against the setting sun. This time the creature made a soft, chirping sound, almost like a greeting, the noise carrying clearly in the still evening air. Helen felt a smile spread across her face, unexpected warmth blooming in her chest at this strange reunion. "You came back," she said softly, her voice filled with wonder as she approached a few steps closer than she had ventured the day before. The capybara's whiskers twitched, and its dark eyes, reflecting the amber light of sunset, seemed to shine with something like contentment. Helen noticed how the animal's presence had a strangely calming effect on her, the day's tensions melting away as she stood in quiet communion with this peaceful creature. "I'm glad to see you're still doing well," she added before continuing her journey home. Each day that followed brought the same encounter. Helen, finishing her work, stepping outside to find the capybara waiting patiently by the brook. By the fourth day, she began bringing a small offering, tender lettuce leaves, or slices of apple, which the capybara would accept with gentle precision, careful not to nip her fingers. The routine became something she looked forward to, a moment of tranquility that marked the transition between her professional and personal hours. On the seventh day, a soft rain fell, painting the world in glistening droplets and filling the air with the sweet, clean scent of wet earth. Helen hurried outside with an umbrella, concerned that her new friend might have sought shelter elsewhere. But there sat the capybara, seemingly unperturbed by the gentle shower, droplets beating on its water-resistant fur like tiny crystals catching the muted light. That was the moment Helen made her decision. This wasn't a random visitation, but a connection that deserved acknowledgement. The following morning, Helen arrived at the clinic earlier than usual, her arms filled with supplies, a waterproof shelter she had constructed from an old doghouse, fresh straw bedding that released a sweet, earthy aroma when fluffed, and a sturdy feeding station that she positioned near the brook. Her hands worked deftly, creating a comfortable space where the capybara could rest protected from the elements, while still enjoying the freedom to come and go as it pleased. Word spread quickly through the small town Meadowbrook's veterinarian had an unusual companion. At first, people came out of curiosity, speaking in hushed tones as they watched from a respectful distance, while the capybara lounged contentedly near Helen's clinic. Local children gave the creature a name, Brooke, in honor of the water that had first drawn them together, and would giggle with delight when the capybara responded to their soft calls with gentle chirps. As days turned into weeks, Brooke became something of a local celebrity, with Helen establishing clear guidelines for interaction to ensure the capybara's well-being. The local newspaper ran a front-page story about the unusual friendship, complete with a photograph of Hellen kneeling beside Brooke, golden afternoon light, bathing them both in a warm glow. Letters began arriving from neighboring towns, expressing interest in visiting Meadowbrook to catch a glimpse of the famous capybara and her compassionate caretaker. What touched Hellen most deeply were the changes she observed in her patients and their owners. The presence of Brooke seemed to cast a spell of tranquility over the entire clinic. Dogs that would normally bark anxiously in the waiting room would instead watch the capybara with curious calm. Children who feared their vaccinations would become so engrossed in watching Brooke graze on the clinic's lawn that they barely noticed the prick of the needle. Even the most concerned pet owners found their worry easing as they observed the peaceful relationship between the veterinarian and her unusual companion. As summer faded into autumn and the maple trees around the clinic blazed with fiery colors, Hellen made a decision that would change both her life and the community forever. After consulting with wildlife experts who confirmed that Brooke was indeed a domestic capybara who had likely escaped from a private collection, and that returning her to the wild would be cruel rather than kind, Hellen officially adopted Brooke as the clinic's permanent mascot. The day she hung the newly painted sign, Meadowbrook Veterinary Clinic and Capybara Sanctuary, marked the beginning of a new chapter filled with unexpected joy. The transformation of the clinic grounds became a community project that brought together people from all walks of life. Farmers donated materials for an expanded enclosure that included a deeper wading pool where Brooke could indulge her natural love of water. The sight of the capybara floating peacefully, only her nose and eyes visible above the surface, became a source of amusement and delight for visitors of all ages. Local school children, under their teachers' guidance, planted capybara-friendly vegetation around the enclosure, learning about ecosystems and animal care while their hands worked in the rich soil. What had begun as a simple connection between a compassionate veterinarian and a lost capybara blossomed into something that nourished the entire community. Elderly residents from the local care home began making regular visits, finding that the peaceful presence of Brooke and the gentle sounds of water eased their aches and brought smiles to faces that had grown unaccustomed to joy. They would sit on the benches Hellen had installed, sunlight warming their shoulders as they watched the capybara's unhurried movements, time seeming to slow to match Brooke's peaceful pace. Hellen noticed that her own approach to life was changing as well, influenced by Brooke's natural mindfulness. She found herself more present in each moment, more attuned to the simple pleasures that had always surrounded her, but had sometimes gone unnoticed in the rush of daily responsibilities. The way morning dew gathered on spider webs like strings of pearls, the particular quality of silence that fell just before dawn, the satisfying weight of a mug of tea cradled between her palms, all became sources of quiet gratitude that enriched her days. The clinic itself evolved, with Hellen incorporating what she called capybara wisdom into her practice. A new calming room was added where anxious animals could acclimate before their examinations, with windows overlooking Brook's enclosure, where the sight of the peaceful capybara often had a tranquilizing effect. Owners remarked on the difference this made, how their pets seemed to sense that this was a place of healing rather than fear, and how Hellen's gentle methods reflected the same patience and acceptance that characterized her relationship with Brooke. As Brooke's first anniversary at the clinic approached, Hellen organized a celebration that would honor not just the capybara, but the spirit of connection she had fostered in Meadowbrook. Invitations were sent. Decorations were crafted from natural materials gathered from the surrounding countryside, and a local baker created a special capybara-shaped cake made with ingredients safe for human consumption, alongside a capybara-friendly fruit arrangement for the guest of honor. The air hummed with anticipation as the day drew near. The celebration day dawned clear and bright, with sunlight spilling across the clinic grounds, like liquid gold, and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of autumn leaves and distant wood smoke. Families arrived, bearing homemade gifts and dishes to share, their faces alight with the simple joy of community gathering. Children ran laughing across the grass, their energy a counterpoint to Brooke's serene presence as she received admirers from her specially decorated enclosure, adorned with streamers of natural fibers and flowers. Mayor Thompson gave a speech about how Brooke had put Meadowbrook on the map, bringing visitors and attention to their small town, but more importantly, how she had reminded them all of the value of slowing down and noticing the beauty in unexpected connections. The crowd nodded in agreement, their faces softened by the shared understanding that sometimes the greatest gifts arrive in the most surprising packages. Hellen felt tears of gratitude warm her eyes as she looked around at the community that had embraced her unusual friend with such wholehearted acceptance. In the months that followed, Hellen expanded her vision, partnering with the local school to develop an educational program where children could learn about animal care, conservation, and the importance of kindness to all living creatures. The sight of young faces lighting up with understanding as they gently offered lettuce leaves to Brooke became one of Hellen's greatest joys, a promise of compassion extending into future generations. These moments of connection, simple yet profound, filled her heart with a deep sense of purpose that extended beyond her veterinary practice. As a natural extension of her work with Brooke, Hellen began offering the clinic grounds as a sanctuary for other abandoned exotic pets, creating specialized habitats where these animals could live with dignity and appropriate care. The community continued to rally around these efforts, with local businesses sponsoring enclosures and volunteers offering their time and skills. What had once been a simple veterinary clinic gradually evolved into a place of healing for animals, humans, and the relationships between them. On quiet evenings, after visitors had gone and the sanctuary settled into peaceful silence, Hellen would often sit beside Brooke's enclosure, the two of them sharing a companionable silence as the stars emerged overhead like scattered diamonds on velvet. These were the moments she treasured most: the gentle sound of Brooke's breathing, the distant chorus of night creatures, the profound contentment that comes from being exactly where one is meant to be. In these peaceful interludes, Hellen would feel gratitude wash over her like gentle waves for the unexpected friendship that had expanded her life in ways she could never have imagined. The story of Hellen and Brooke became something of a modern fable in the region, shared as an example of how openness to unexpected encounters can transform not just individual lives but entire communities. Visitors who came to see the famous capybara often left with something more valuable than photographs, a reminder to remain receptive to the unplanned connections that life offers, and how a simple act of kindness can ripple outward in ever-widening circles of positive change. And for Hellen, each day brought the quiet joy of knowing that sometimes the most meaningful relationships begin with nothing more complicated than a gentle greeting on an ordinary afternoon. As seasons passed and the maple trees around the clinic cycled through their eternal rhythm of renewal, what remained constant was the special bond between a compassionate veterinarian and the capybara who had chosen her. In the golden light of countless sunsets, they continued their peaceful coexistence, a living reminder that family is not always defined by species or circumstance, but by the heart's capacity to recognize kindred spirits. And in the gentle hush of evening, as day transformed into night, Meadowbrook's residents would sometimes pause in their activities, glancing toward the clinic with smiles of quiet appreciation for the unexpected blessing that had come to dwell among them.